So let's say you want to buy the new 24-inch iMac because of its incredibly powerful and reliable M1 chip, or maybe because of its detailed and color-accurate 4.5K display, or maybe even because of the radical new design with the white bezels and that classic chin, but you just have one major problem. You have no idea which model, maybe which color, or which upgrade options you should buy. Well, that's what I'll help you figure out in this video, because if you're not careful, you could easily make one of these 8 purchasing mistakes. So before I get into the buyer's guide portion of this video, let's get into the first mistake that you absolutely must avoid. You need to know that the base model has a few limitations, like having a 7-core GPU instead of the full 8, not getting an Ethernet port built into the power supply, not getting Touch ID on the new Magic Keyboard, being limited to just 4 colors, and the biggest one, which is only getting 2 ports on the back instead of 4. Now, if you want any of those things, you basically have 2 different options. Number 1 is to choose the base model and add things like the upgraded power supply with Ethernet, or upgrade to the Magic Keyboard with Touch ID, but keep in mind that you won't be able to get the 2 extra ports if you use this method. And then option 2 is that you can simply go for the $1499 model, which comes with all of that included, but the issue here is that you might not care about the Ethernet port at all, since these iMacs come with Wi-Fi 6, which is very reliable, or maybe you don't care about Touch ID, so it sucks to be paying the extra $200 if you don't want all of those features. And this actually leads to mistake number 2, thinking that the extra 2 ports on the $1,500 model are full-speed Thunderbolt ports, because they're not. They're simply USB Type-C ports with limited bandwidth, being 8 times as slow, but thankfully there's an awesome solution to this problem, which is perfect for the desktop iMac. OWC's new Thunderbolt hub is able to take just 1 Thunderbolt port on the iMac and turn it into 1 regular USB 3.2 port and 3, yes I said 3, full-speed Thunderbolt ports. So if you go for the base model iMac for $1,300 and buy this $150 hub, you're gonna end up with a total of 4 available Thunderbolt ports and an extra USB Type-A port, which you can't get on the higher-end iMac models no matter what price you pay. The only downside is that you don't get those other upgrades like the Ethernet power supply, the Touch ID Magic Keyboard, or the extra GPU core. But since the hub is only $150, you can spend that leftover $50 on any of those upgrades and you'll have 4 full-speed Thunderbolt ports. Or you can actually put that $50 towards the even better OWC Thunderbolt dock, which packs a ton of different ports like 3 Thunderbolt ports, gigabit Ethernet, 4 USB Type-A ports, an SD card slot, and an audio jack, which I would say is definitely worth it for those who care about those ports. So if you're interested in either of those, you can use the links in the description below to check them out. Now, getting into mistake number 3, if you're planning on reselling the iMac later so you can pick up the larger iMac in the future, be very cautious about the color of the iMac that you're buying. For example, everyone out there is fine with silver since it's a classic and neutral color, but if you're gonna be buying a yellow iMac, you're instantly scratching out a portion of the potential buyers who think that color would look ridiculous in a home or an office. Or if you're gonna be buying the pink one, you're probably gonna have a much tougher time selling it. So if you're planning on reselling it, be mindful about the color you buy. So you might want to go with something like blue or silver, but then again, if you're keeping it long term, then buy whatever your heart desires. But bringing us into mistake number 4, if you know for sure that you're going to be buying the larger iMac when it comes out anyway, then it might just make sense to completely hold off on this 24-inch iMac and wait a few months for the new one. And if you absolutely need an M1 Mac right now to get you through those few months, then I honestly would recommend getting the M1 MacBook Air, since it's currently on sale for only $900 brand new on Amazon, and that model is going to be much easier to resell than the 24-inch iMac since it's portable and more popular. Getting into mistake number 5, don't think that you absolutely must go for 16 gigabytes of RAM because everybody's saying that 8 gigabytes is not enough. That's simply not true, because we've ran extensive testing on our 8 gigabyte M1 MacBook Air and it performed impressively well compared to the 16 gigabyte M1 MacBook Pro, definitely not being a huge bottleneck. And although 8 gigabytes of RAM is definitely not 16, Apple's unified memory is incredibly efficient, so you can get much more out of 8 gigabytes of M1 M1 memory compared to 8GB of RAM on an Intel Mac like we showed off in one of our tests. We even proved that Apple's unified memory is better by completely maxing out the RAM on both an M1 MacBook Pro and a Windows-based laptop, and then showing how the M1 barely slowed down in terms of performance compared to the other laptop with traditional RAM. So I'd say that for most people, 8GB is going to be totally fine, and if you're worried about the whole SSD swapping issues that people claim the M1 Macs have, we actually did a full dedicated video on that and found that the issues were very rare and likely due to software bugs with Rosetta 2, which may have already been dealt with. So don't worry about getting only 8GB of RAM. Now on the flip side, we have mistake number 6, which is thinking that you can upgrade the RAM yourself after you buy it, which you can actually do on the 27-inch Intel iMacs, but that is not the case with Apple Silicon Macs. So it is very important that you buy the amount of RAM that you think you'll need right away. This is going to be the case mainly for people who are using or planning to use high-end productivity apps like Xcode, Logic, and especially photo editing, since those tasks can really eat up a lot of RAM. And if you're thinking of potentially running virtual machines in the future, like running Windows 10 using Parallels as we showed off with our M1 MacBook Pro, then getting 16GB of RAM is a really good idea since you have to dedicate your RAM to that virtual machine. But once again, if you're somebody who doesn't do any of this high-end productivity work, 8GB should be just fine, and you'll be able to spend that extra $200 on something else, say extra SSD storage. And that brings us to mistake number 7. You need to be wise about the amount of storage that you buy because like RAM, you cannot upgrade it yourself. So some people are going to be buying the base model with only 250GB of storage and then suffering a few years down the road when they're completely out of storage and they can't figure out what to keep or what to delete. But then on the flip side, somebody's going to go out and buy the 2TB SSD storage model for an extra $800, and then a couple years later when they're ready to resell it and buy something else, they will realize that you won't get anywhere near that extra $800 for the SSD when they didn't even get close to using even 1TB. So the point that I'm trying to make is be wise about your storage, and the best way to do that is to look at how much storage you're using on your current computer and then order based off of that. And then finally, for mistake number 8, consider buying an external storage drive because you can save a ton of money, and with the iMac, you have a desktop setup and not a MacBook, so internal storage isn't as big of a deal. For example, this Sabrent Rocket Extreme SSD that we recommend with 2TB of storage is only $360 on Amazon compared to paying Apple a massive $800 for their 2TB. And since this is a Thunderbolt drive, you're gonna get incredibly fast transfer speeds similar to what you get with the iMac's internal storage. And on top of that, if you end up reselling your iMac sooner than you initially thought, you get to keep the SSD drive and reuse it for your next computer, so it's really a great solution. And now, with all of those mistakes out of the way, let's finally get into the buyer's guide. If you're buying the 24-inch iMac as a reliable computer for casual or family use, mostly relying on web-based apps or for internet or for business, schooling, stuff like that, then I would honestly just go with the base $1,300 model. You definitely don't need 16GB of RAM, and you don't need to upgrade to the 8-core GPU model. And then if you really want the Touch ID Magic Keyboard, you can upgrade to that separately and potentially even upgrade to a 512GB SSD if you have a big family who will all be using it. Now, if you want a reliable computer, but you're also going to be using it for some light productivity work, like some basic video or photo editing, then I would argue that sticking with 8GB of RAM should be just fine, but you'll definitely want at least 512GB of SSD. And I don't think that the 7-core GPU on the base model is a big deal at all. But if you're taking your work very seriously with professional programming, music production, video editing, photo editing, or anything else that you rely on to make money, then I would definitely upgrade to 16GB of RAM and either get the mid-level spec with the extra USB Type-C ports or buy one of those ODB-C Thunderbolt hubs for the extra ports. And at that point, you should at least be buying a 512GB SSD model unless you can rely on fast external storage like the Sabrent SSD drives. And finally, if you're somebody who's thinking of running Parallel 16 to to play games under Windows 10, I would definitely recommend a large SSD for downloading games and 16 gigabytes of RAM since the M1 GPU depends on it. And at that point, if you really take gaming seriously, I would honestly just wait for the larger M1X iMac, which should be coming later this year with a whole lot more performance for gaming. So hopefully this video helped you make a decision, and if it did, consider using our links down below to order. But if you're still confused, comment down below with your specific use case and we can help you make a decision. Thank you guys for watching. This has been Max. Click that circle above if you guys want to subscribe and help us reach 1 million subscribers by the end of this year. You can watch one of those videos right over there, and I'll see you in the next video.